Hey there, everyone. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and welcome to another edition of the Mad Science Lab podcast. Continuing on with the My Thoughts on My Team series. And today, our guest is Jack Cavanagh, player profiler. He looks like he's panned his camera up a little. He had a real Dr. Evil vibe going on with the cat on his lap, but you can't see it anymore. Jack is here to break down the Baltimore Ravens. Thanks for joining me, Jack.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Excited to talk some football with a true genius, mad scientist in the industry.
Yeah, evil genius. I'm definitely the mad part of mad scientist, but
mad, angry all the
these
time.
Elaborate trades and elaborate waiver scenarios. You ever see anyone go into Waiver Wire Wednesday with a flow sheet?
That's intense.
Flow sheets. I have literally, you will look and I will have 40 waiver claims to get 3 players. It'll be, dropping this guy for that guy. Yeah, oh yeah, it's elaborate. It's crazy. I'm a true sicko. As you can see from, like I said, I've got 14 of these scheduled today. So you get me while I'm relatively fresh, despite we'll battle some health issues here. Oh, I can see the cat again. It's back.
Yeah, she'll be popping in and out throughout the show. Don't you worry. She likes some attention from once in a while.
Don't we all? I'm just happy. This is school hours and my kid won't be joining us. So, well, thank you for joining us, Jack. You want to tell everyone where they can find you?
You can find me everywhere at Cavanagh87 on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find my content over on playerprofiler.com. I run the profiler_news account, run the @RotoUnderworld account, all the Twitter accounts. So make sure you are following along with all the good content, some content that Aaron himself writes.
Oh, so listening to all the things you're doing, you're a sick degenerate like me, hey?
Just a little bit.
I remember seeing Matt, before I really knew who you were, I remember hearing Matt Kelly talk about you, and then I looked and he's like, oh yeah, Jack's a real sicko. He's got his podcast every day, and he's doing this and that, and I started following you then, and I'm like, this guy's real sick just like me. You're doing something every day. So that's how I go. I'll record 14 of these a day, or today, so I can release them daily so that I can do other content. My buddies at work are like, oh, you record it all in 2 days so you don't have to do anything all month. No. Record them all in 2 days so I can do other stuff all month. So.
Yeah, it's not relaxing. It is getting ahead of the curve. And so that way more content can come out and more content. And
now it's just about working on my post-draft rankings and starting the articles. So. All right, well, without further ado, let's get into it. Like I said, Jack will be here taking a look at the Baltimore Ravens. Your first choice, I think, was the Lions, correct?
First choice was the Lions. I do cover the Lions for the Believe Network, the Believe in Lions podcast, but I am also clearly a Baltimore Ravens fan.
I see that.
Lamar Jackson, when he got drafted to the Baltimore Ravens, it was a birthday present from my grandparents, got the jersey, and I got to be honest, if they hadn't re-signed Lamar Jackson, if they had bungled this situation, I probably would have given up on them just because of the recent history of mistakes. But it feels as though Eric DeCosta has remedied that, and he is moving forward. He is going all in, building this team the right way. It's starting to feel as though maybe Ozzie Newsome had to sit down with him. Hey, man, get this together. And they did.
Were you a believer in Jackson when they drafted him?
Oh, yeah. I was a massive Lamar Jackson fan entering the draft. And the fact that it was the Ravens who landed him, which meant the end of the Joe Flacco era, it was just all things came together beautifully.
Did he break? I can't remember. Did he break out as a rookie or as a sophomore?
Sophomore. So as a rookie, he was he broke out at the end of his rookie season.
He played 8 games or something as a rookie only, right?
Yeah. To start the year, he was kind of a wildcat quarterback for the Ravens. And then Flacco, I think it was a neck issue. Lamar enters the lineup. And then even when Flacco gets healthy, you can't bench Lamar Jackson. And then sophomore, he has his MVP season.
Yeah, I had him in his MVP season in redraft in the 15th or 16th round, and it was beautiful. But so we'll start there with the quarterback. There's obviously nothing to see here. I listed the backup anyways as Huntley with Lamar as the starter. There's nothing's going to change there. They were up in the air for a while, but he has since signed his extension. So, Lamar, what do you see him as? You think he has QB1 in him again? What's his ceiling? Where do you expect him?
Oh, his ceiling is QB1 overall, especially with the weapons that they brought in around him, the upgrade at offensive coordinator. And I know we don't like to get bogged down in the coaching upgrade, but this is an actual difference. This is going from a Greg Roman offense, which is very run heavy,
Yeah.
very limited in the passing game, to a Todd Monken wide open offense. And people made the argument for years, well, they need to run this offense for Greg Roman because Lamar Jackson. I don't necessarily agree. I think you can still run Lamar Jackson, have spread wide open. That puts smaller bodies on the field, more defensive backs, less hits for Lamar Jackson, and he can still make them miss. So I think having more 3 wide receiver sets with Odell, Bateman, and Zay Flowers,
Zay? Yeah.
that is going to open things up for Lamar Jackson in the run game and in the passing game. His ceiling is QB1 overall, and his floor,
Yeah.
I don't know how he falls outside the top
No.
10 at quarterback. Even the top 8 would be a stretch if he plays the full season and he's healthy.
This has 4,000 yards passing, 1,000 rushing written all over it.
Yep.
So, like I said, nothing to see there. Running back, it gets a little interesting. I have been buying J.K. Dobbins everywhere I can. People seem to hate him. Gus is just your typical, backup injury. He I don't know if he has standalone value. I started him in a few leagues last year, but it wasn't by choice. Justice Hill, I'm going to disregard almost completely unless there's a major issue. Keaton Mitchell, I was intrigued with. And the only reason I continue to keep him on my board is just because Baltimore seems to go through 15 running backs a year. So maybe he'll get a chance. But really, I'm keen in on J.K. Dobbins here.
And the interesting thing about Keaton Mitchell is he's the running back they added after the draft. They did not draft a running back. They waited until undrafted free agents could sign. J.K. Dobbins, the fact you were already buying him, his value just went up a lot. His price tag just got more expensive because, like you said, Gus Edwards is the competition. J.K. Dobbins is hands down. There is no comparison between Dobbins and Edwards. Edwards is a between the tackles grinder. He'll siphon off some touchdowns. But again, with this more wide open offense, Dobbins will be allowed to get in space more. He will potentially have a couple more receptions. I know Lamar's still not going to dump it off, but maybe some more in the screen game. Just getting J.K. Dobbins with the ball in space, that is going to be beautiful because we even saw last year he was not healthy and he could still break away from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's why I'm buying, though. You say the price has gone up. The casual players, some like my work leagues and family leagues, price hasn't gone up. They're still terrified of the injuries. They don't realize second year post, was it ACL for him?
ACL, MCL, yeah.
Second year, though, post injury, you should see him back to pretty much full speed here. And the price hasn't really gone up significant. The majority of the casual people that I've seen, outside the industry, they don't realize second year he'll ramp up and they didn't really add anyone of substance. And Gus Edwards is the backup. The price should have doubled the last week or so. It hasn't. I mean, it has in the industry with sharp people. It hasn't to like in my casual leagues. Don't know how many casual leagues you play in, but a couple of my work leagues, the price hasn't gone up.
And see, I'm willing to pay the increased price too. So if you're telling me I can get J.K. Dobbins for what I was always getting him for, okay, sign me up. He was already a steal. He'll continue to be a steal.
I got him for the 204 in this year's draft. Was it, what's today? Tuesday? I got him Sunday, right after the draft, the 204 in a super flex league, which the 204 has gone the other way. It's lost value.
Oh, yeah. Some of these landing spots for running backs, Zach Charbonnet stands out especially.
Oh, I own Kenneth Walker. Please don't bring it up.
I apologize.
Please. That never happened. I didn't hear it. Nothing happened. God. All right, moving on to an interesting wide receiver room. We have some potential stars, but not a lot of proven players with the exception of one where we don't know if he can still play. So they've got ESPN has Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, and OBJ as the starters. I think they may have had Devin Duvernay, and I took a liberty on this one, and I moved Zay Flowers in myself. They've got rookie Dante Demas, Duvernay, Nelson Aguilar, and James Proche on the bench. OBJ, what's that? Second ACL of his career?
Second ACL.
29, 28?
Second ACL, but It's weird because when he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, he didn't actually have a full ACL. And so what that means is it wasn't fully structurally sound to begin with. And so it was always a matter of time that Odell was going to need knee surgery once again. Unfortunately, he blew it in the Super Bowl, but he actually appears to finally be healthy. We knew the surgery went bad last time. This time, it's by all accounts, it seems to have gone well. And I don't think the Ravens need him to be the Odell Beckham he once was. If he can be the Odell Beckham we saw in the Super Bowl, a second, third target who is a monster in the red zone, I think that's all they need him to be.
So that's an interesting way of describing it. I've never looked at it like that before. So do you think his injury would be more of an aggravation of the original ACL injury as opposed to a second ACL injury?
I can't. It was very confusing to read it because basically what he
Yeah.
said is didn't have an ACL. They knew I was going to need this surgery, so potentially that would have been it. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to speculate too much.
No, yeah.
All I
Fair enough.
know is Odell Beckham's knee was mangled. That's why he didn't sign until later in the season. That's why teams were not interested because they knew, hey, if we get him in right now, he's not going to make it to the playoffs.
This is an interesting wide receiver room. I think the cost on a lot of them is going to be suppressed. So at cost, I find I'm probably going to have a lot of shares. I think I'm going to diversify though between Bateman, Flowers, and OBJ. I could see any of the three being the one, and I could see any of them being the three. I feel like I like Flowers, but as a rookie, I loved Bateman, but he's let me down. So I think I'm going to have a little bit of everyone in this for those three wide receivers, anyways.
I think that's a good way to do it. I still think Bateman will be the one. I know it's been in limited sample sizes, but we have been able to see the talent, and he is an elite talent, even if he is feuding with the general manager and not getting targets. I'm hoping that signing Lamar Jackson, new offensive coordinator, this can be sort of a fresh start, including for Rashad Bateman. But you got to diversify to mitigate some of that risk. These are players that I would say are better in a best ball. And I know we hate that cliche, but it's going to be tough to trust any of them to start the season. It's going to be maybe he goes off for 2 touchdowns or maybe he gets 3 targets.
I hear better in best ball. I just automatically assume it means expect them to be inconsistent. That's all that's code for.
That is exactly what it is, because you're going to get spike weeks. I promise you. There will be 20-point weeks for Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham, maybe Zay Flowers too, but you're also going to have some 3-point weeks. That won't happen with Mark Andrews. He'll be consistent. He'll be level, but the rest of these guys, and speaking of better in a best ball, Nelson Aguilar on the bench, the definition of that guy, but he's not going to get a whole lot of run this year.
Think Dante Demas, the rookie, has a shot here of making the roster, or in the event of an injury. He's one of the rookies I didn't know much about. Was he undrafted or just a late day 3 pick?
I believe he was undrafted. They did not draft any wide receivers. The Ravens typically will have an undrafted player make the roster. I think last year was the first time in 10 years or something that they didn't, or maybe they did. Either way, someone's going to make this roster from an undrafted point. Demas, though, I don't think he'll matter. Even if he does make the roster, he's not going to be fantasy relevant. He's going to be buried behind Duvernay, behind Aguilar, behind Proche. It's going to be a while before I don't think he ever sees the field.
No, I was thinking the same thing. For me, it's I'm going to own some of the top 3. And like you said, I don't mind Duvernay or Aguilar, a late round flyer to fill out my wide receiver. There's someone I think I would be targeting late in, not best ball, in Scott Fishbowl, where the pool's so dry, there's nothing left. You just say, okay, I'll throw these guys in. Duvernay had a few useful games last year with Bateman out. Aguilar will have his weeks here and there. So,
and you get to the upside of potential return touchdowns with Devin Duvernay. I know we're typically not playing in return yardage leagues, but you still get that 6-point bonus for the touchdown. So that's the one little upside he has over Aguilar.
Yeah, for sure. Tight end is about as difficult to assess as quarterback here. Mark Andrews is going to be the guy. He's going to be your top 2 or 3 as long as he stays healthy. And if he doesn't stay healthy, Isaiah Likely proved he was more than startable as a fantasy asset last year.
Yeah,
Pretty much sums it up.
Isaiah Likely was very impressive last year for a non-athlete too. He did not test particularly well at the combine or at his pro day, but he's got some shake in those hips. He makes people miss. He can run wide receiver routes. He's wearing that number 80 that they used to have in Miles Boykin. They're about the same size, but and straight line, Boykin is a much better athlete, but you see them on a football field, and Isaiah Likely is more like a wide receiver than Miles Boykin ever was. Andrews, though, what else is there to say? It's Travis Kelce, it's Mark Andrews. Some people had TJ Hawkinson ahead of Mark Andrews, but now that they've drafted Jordan Addison, that is not an option anymore.
This seems like a team that if ever there was one that would run a 2 tight end set, this seems like a prime example for it, because I think Likely has just as much potential as any of these receivers, with the exception, maybe Bateman. All righty, let's move on to the next part. If you had to, we'll keep this to redraft focus. If you had to target one player at what you assume to be ADP or cost, who would your target be?
Oh, it is J.K. Dobbins. We already talked about it, and it has to be J.K. Dobbins at ADP, at trade value, at whatever it is.
Yeah.
I know I've said that this is going to be a more open offense. They are going to pass more, and this is true. But they're still going to run the ball plenty. That is something that having Lamar Jackson, much like having Jalen Hurts, those read options, that is a staple of your run game. They love those types of runs in Baltimore, even with the new offensive coordinator. That will not change. And so J.K. Dobbins, he's going to have heavy volume on the ground. He's going to see an increased target share. And this offense is just going to be better than it was last year. With new weapons on offense, there will be more red zone trips, which means more touchdown potential. J.K. Dobbins is the absolute buy, the value, the guy I want, other than Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson is just appropriately priced.
Yeah, he is the target for me in redraft and dynasty. Okay, that brings us to an avoid. I knew what I was going to ask next, and as I'm looking through trying to find an avoid, I don't know if I can find a good one. I think the values on all of these guys, none of them are going to be, Jackson's going to be the highest ranked, but I don't know if there's anyone here who's going to be supremely overvalued. Do you have an avoid on the team?
It's not a true avoid because I will be mixing in some, but Zay Flowers is probably the closest thing I have to an avoid. He's the one I'll be lowest on. And that's because he's a rookie. He's a rookie that I love, but he is still a rookie. He's going to take some time to adjust. He's going to have some of those gadgety plays, which again, those can lead to spike weeks, but it's going to be tough to trust him consistently. So in a redraft stardom, Zay Flowers is going to be a lot harder to get into your lineup compared to these other guys. But like you said, no one is going excessively high. Mark Andrews, maybe you consider that based on other positions, but in terms of tight end, the tight end too, that's just who he is. And Lamar Jackson, yeah, he's going the earliest, but he's also not getting drafted at his ceiling. He's what, the QB 8 off the board right now? His ceiling's QB 1.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I think I would agree. It's Zay Flowers for me, not because I'm low on him, just because I think him and Rashad Bateman are going to fall in a similar range. And I think I'd rather just take my shot on Rashad Bateman, especially in his rookie year. So I would say he's as close to an avoid as I have. Alrighty, final question. I have them at 6th in the AFC at 10-7. Where do you see them finishing this year in the division, we'll say? Second? Think they beat Cincy?
Nah, unfortunately, I do not think they beat Cincy. I am a massive Joe Burrow fan. Joe Burrow is him. He is just a game changer. The fact that he could convince the Cincinnati Bengals to build an indoor practice facility, something that had never happened in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals, that type of person just changes things completely. And even with the upgrades that the Baltimore Ravens have made this year, the Bengals are still a better offense. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd is a better 3 receiver core than the Ravens have. Ravens have the advantage at tight end, but it's going to be tough for the Ravens to pass the Bengals. However, it'll probably be similar to last year where it comes down to the end. And I know it was weird this year because of the lost game that we had where oh, well, if the Ravens beat the Bengals still are AFC North champions, but the Ravens get the home game.
That was so weird.
What does that just make it make it for the game,
so
make it for the
weird.
championship.
Yeah. 10-7 last year. You think they improve on it, get worse, stay the same?
I don't think they'll get worse. They will either stay the same or add a win or two, maybe 11 or 12 wins, but I don't see them falling into the 9-win range. This team, the fact that they got 10 wins last year without Lamar Jackson for a lot of the season, with Lamar Jackson for a full year, they will get 10 wins minimum every time.
The last thing I just thought of it right now, and I had worried about this when I thought Lamar was going to be playing under the franchise tag. Now that he's signed his long-term deal and no longer has to worry about money, are you at all worried that maybe he starts to make some business decisions here and doesn't rush as much? He did show kind of an unwillingness to play through anything last year. You worried that takes a hit on his fantasy impact?
I don't know if it was an unwillingness to play last year. He did have a grade 2 PCL tear, which is borderline surgery requiring. So I know there was a lot of talk that, yeah, he's sitting out because he wants a contract. I don't believe that. I think that was a Ravens negotiating tactic. As for protecting himself, maybe. I don't think it will be at the expense of the raw rushing numbers. I think it'll be at the expense of a couple extra yardage points, because Lamar Jackson has been one of those guys that is not afraid to lower the shoulder. He is not afraid to make you try to dangle you, try to run you over, whatever it takes to get a couple extra yards. Not to the extent of Josh Allen. He's a little bit more cautious than that, but he's still too reckless. And so if he wants to keep up that running, but avoid a couple of those hits, I think it's actually going to be better for him, maybe at the expense of 20 total fantasy points in terms of yardage, but it's going to increase that longevity for sure and keep him healthy for the whole season.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jack. That was great. You want to take one more shot here to tell everyone where they can find you?
You can find me everywhere at Cavanagh87 on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find me 7 days a week at 7 p.m. Eastern on Player Profiler Today on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. And you can find me on the Player Profiler Twitter, the Player Profiler TikToks, all across the board. Aaron, thank you so much for having me. This is truly
You're a sick man. You're a sick man. I like you, though.
I like you too, my friend. We're both sick, and that's all right.
Yeah, nonstop. This is all I do. So, when I've got a kid, it's either work, my son, or this nonstop. So, well, thanks for joining me. All right, everyone. This has been my thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens with Jack Cavanagh from Player Profiler. Continue to check back every day. We'll have a new team drop every day with a different analyst. Once again, I'm Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and thank you for watching the Mad Science Lab podcast. Have a good day.